Okay, thank you all for joining me today. My name is Shaifali Aggarwal, and I am the founder and CEO of Ivy Groupe, which is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company. And today we are going to be discussing how to stand out as an MBA applicant in the age of COVID-19. But before jumping into this topic, I'd like to just thank GMAT Club for this opportunity and also let you know that GMAT Club will be hosting the MBA Spotlight in mid-October, which is a virtual MBA fair with many top schools being present, such as Stanford and Wharton. There should be more info in the chat box, so definitely check it out and sign up. It should be a very information-packed session. Okay, so with that, let's start with an introduction about Ivy Groupe. So who are we? So Ivy Groupe is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company that provides personalized and customized services to clients all over the world who are applying to business school. And I want to stress that we are a boutique firm, which means clients are working directly with me and they're getting very personalized attention. One of our core strengths is providing in-depth customer service. We care very deeply about our clients, which is why they always come first. And in fact, this has led to me being the #1 ranked MBA admissions consultant in client satisfaction on Poets Quants. So our mission is to help clients tell their story to business schools so that they can achieve their dreams and impact the world. We are very passionate about authenticity, leadership, success, and impact. And our philosophy really focuses on authenticity and storytelling so that clients can tell their story to business schools and achieve their dreams and impact the world in whatever field that they are in. And as the slide shows on the bottom, our clients have been admitted to many of the world's top business school programs, including Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, MIT, and Kellogg, to just name a few. Now, with respect to my background, I am a graduate of Harvard Business School and Princeton University. I started my career in finance before going down more of an entrepreneurial path, which is why my rich and multifaceted career across industries and functions makes me extremely well suited to understand the varied backgrounds of candidates, just like you, who are applying to business school. I actually spent most of my career as a finance professional on Wall Street, where I worked in the investment banking and asset management industries at leading companies like JP Morgan and Neuberger Berman. And I also have experience working in the educational nonprofit sector and as an entrepreneur, founding an online media company prior to Ivy Groupe. I've always had a very strong passion for education and feel very lucky to have had the opportunities that I did, which eventually led me to launching Ivy Groupe and to where I am today. So I've spent many years successfully coaching MBA applicants from all over the world to the MBA programs of their choice. Immediately before starting Ivy Groupe, I was Executive Vice President of Business Development and Strategy and a Senior MBA admissions consultant at another admissions company. And at Harvard Business School, I also had the very unique opportunity to gain perspective on what the top business schools are looking for in candidates when I served as VP admissions of the Women's Student Association. And so in that role, I collaborated directly with the HBS admissions office as a bridge between current students and prospective and admitted students. I have also been a featured speaker both domestically and internationally on the QS World MBA Tour. I, of course, have led webinars on GMAT Club. I have been quoted as an expert in US News multiple times, as well as Business Insider. I've been a contributor to Forbes, Entrepreneur, and the Muse as well. And I'm also a member of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. So I absolutely love what I do and am always on the lookout to sharing my expertise to help others also achieve their goals when it comes to MBA programs. So before jumping into the heart of the presentation, let's just take a few minutes to talk about current MBA admissions trends. So overall, let's talk a little bit more overall, and then we'll get into the specific landscape that we're facing right now. So as this chart shows, the MBA landscape has never been more competitive, with the top two MBA programs, Stanford and Harvard, having acceptance rates of 6% and 11% respectively. Now, if you look at the top 7 programs, or the M7 as they're called, they have acceptance rates ranging from 6% to 24%. So since this process is so competitive, it is extremely important to put your best foot forward when you are applying to business school. So this is just the landscape in general. So it's already a very competitive process. So now if we sort of layer on COVID, or the COVID-19 environment on top of this, what are the implications? So first off, as we look at COVID-19 specific related impacts on the MBA admissions process or the landscape, here is sort of the first takeaway, and really, one of the main ones, that the number of applications is expected to increase and is already showing this trend. So we are, of course, facing an unparalleled event in our lives, which is leading to a recession if we're not in one already. And so the volume of business school applications in a given application cycle is typically counter-cyclical in nature. So in other words, when the economy is strong and there is a robust job market, people decide to continue working, leading to fewer business school applications. On the flip side, when the economy is in a recession and the job market is weak, many people think about returning to school. And as a result, the number of MBA applications increase. And so since we are in this very, precarious economic environment, there has actually already been an uptick in the number of MBA applications during this 2020-2021 business school application cycle. So just to provide some data points here, Columbia, for instance, has already said that they have seen an uptick of applications of about 5%. So the interesting thing about this phenomena is that schools recognize that this is happening. And so some schools are actually considering increasing their class size to counteract this and really make this a fair cycle for everybody. So for instance, Columbia has specifically said their J term has capacity to take on more clients than in prior years just for this cycle. Harvard Business School has said that they are looking to add another section or two, and they've said that publicly, so they're looking into that. So that's sort of the good news, is that some schools, although not all, but some are aware of this and are looking to increase their class size. So what else is contributing to this increase in the number of applications? So here's sort of another factor playing into this. Schools are showing some flexibility with respect to submission of the GMAT and GRE scores. So we saw a lot of this at the end of the cycle last year, kind of in March, April, when schools started to extend their deadlines and sort of created this additional COVID-related round, and we're waiving the GMAT and GRE score requirements. Now, interestingly, this has trickled into this cycle a little bit. For example, just last week, MIT stated that they're not requiring a score due to the challenges of the pandemic. And some schools are offering extensions for certain conditions, like Wharton, where those conditions may be, finding it difficult to take the exam online, etc. So what this means is that people who may not have had a chance to study for the exam, or maybe they're struggling with the exam, will have a sort of better opportunity to apply without giving that score. So this is also causing the number of applications to increase. Another sort of factor to consider is that it's becoming more, easier than ever to really learn about business school programs given the virtual environment. So it really has, become, I would say, this even playing field where, because no one can really visit schools on campus, people are able to virtually, just like the MBA Spotlight that GMAT Club is hosting, are able to learn about schools wherever you are in the world. And so there has actually been increases in volume in terms of the traffic to business school websites. There have been more virtual conferences. You can sign up for webinars in the current environment. Many more webinars are being hosted by MBA programs, and you can speak with current students and alums. So this is actually making the process much, much easier for people when it comes to just learning about MBA programs. And then finally, another phenomena to keep in mind is just deferrals. So interestingly, when we were back in March, April, there was sort of this belief that deferrals would really, really hurt the applicant pool this year because those candidates would be taking spots in that class. While this has played out a little bit, the good news is that it hasn't played out as drastically as was originally believed when COVID-19 first started. So some schools like Harvard Business School have been very liberal with their policies for deferrals, but that means they are offsetting that with more spots in the future, such as another section or two at HBS. But other schools have actually been a lot more strict around their policies when it comes to this. So most people, and I saw this even with my own client base, the people who were really only granted deferrals were those who actually had a very valid personal reason, and it was just being done on a case-by-case basis. So yes, I do want to acknowledge that there are some spots that have been taken through deferrals, but that's not as bad as people may think it may be. But as we look at all these factors together, an increase in the number of applications, maybe slightly smaller number of spots, it is sort of resulting in this more competitive COVID-19 landscape when it comes to the MBA admissions process. So what does this mean for you? So let's really get into the heart of the presentation, which is how do you stand out as an MBA applicant in this very sort of competitive landscape? So here's the first thing to do. Focus on authenticity and your unique attributes. So as Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. So in my experience, I have seen that there is a tendency for candidates to see what has worked for friends and family members or colleagues who have successfully been admitted to the MBA programs of their choice, and then try to copy their stories. But what may have helped them gain admission to a business school will most likely not work for you. Why? Because the reality is that you never actually know all of the particulars of someone's story. And so through my experiences, I've really seen that those who are the most authentic, and so this has always been the case, but it's even more important now, but those who are the most authentic in their applications are really the ones who are the most successful. So while you should, of course, acknowledge and be aware of your competition, don't focus too much on the particulars of their story. Instead, focus on you and your unique attributes. That is what will make you authentic. Now, as I mentioned, at Ivy Groupe, our philosophy focuses on authenticity in order to help clients craft compelling and differentiated applications that really stand out. And this stems from a very strong belief that every single person has a unique and compelling story to tell. So in the competitive MBA application environment that we find ourselves in today, sharing and drawing upon your unique narrative is even more paramount. Because after all, that is what will enable you to be memorable in a large pool of candidates who are vying for a limited number of available spots. And as you craft your own authentic story, there are a few things you should do. One is to make sure to draw upon your unique experiences, talk about the why, and convey your voice. And so let's just go through each of these. So when you draw upon your unique experiences, what you have experienced throughout your life, in school, personally, in the workplace, is what makes you you. There is no other single person in this world who has walked in your shoes, who has had your exact experiences, and who has seen the world from your eyes. And so think about those experiences that have shaped you into the person you are today and jot them down. Talk to those who are closest to you to get their thoughts, and make sure you're capturing the full picture. Are there common aspects about you that start to emerge from these stories? Remember, admissions committees want to understand the living person beyond the two-dimensional application. So take some time to think about what really makes you unique. The second aspect, as you think about authenticity, is to talk about the why. Now, business school applications are really more about the why than the what. So anyone can talk about his or her experiences and accomplishments, right? But what really will set an application apart is providing color on why something has been instrumental in shaping you, or why something means so much to you. So it's this interpretation. For instance, it could be, the impact that you've had, maybe the obstacles that you've overcome, the lessons that you've learned. All of this collectively is what will make you authentic and very human. And so your diverse insights will help you to be a meaningful contributor to your class. And that's what schools will start to see in your applications. So it's really, really important that the why comes through in your applications. And finally, as we think about this idea of focusing on authenticity and your unique attributes as we sort of navigate the current COVID-19 landscape, make sure to convey your voice. Let your personality really shine through. So while business school essays are, yes, of course, formal pieces of work, they should be written in your voice. If you have a certain style of writing, don't be afraid to let that shine through. And although you may get feedback from family members, friends, and yes, even MBA admissions consultants, it is extremely important that you always make the ultimate call when it comes to your essays, since they represent you, they represent your accomplishments, your perspectives, your values. So really own what you do. So as you start to think about your unique attributes, really keep an eye towards being very authentic with respect to who you are, because the cookie cutter approach does not work at all in this process, and it's actually going to hurt you. Okay, so what else can you do to really step up or stand out when it comes to the MBA application process and the very competitive landscape? So the second thing is to step up and be very proactive in the workplace. And yes, even in a virtual environment. So some of you may have started going back to the office, or maybe you're going back just a day or two a week or whatever it may be. Some of you are likely still working 100% in a virtual environment, but that doesn't mean that you still cannot step up and be proactive. Throughout the world, employees everywhere are having to adjust. This came as a shock when COVID-19 first started, but people are still adjusting and sort of settling in. And so this may mean, for instance, that people are juggling professional obligations with their personal responsibilities. So you may have a boss or a supervisor or a colleague, for instance, who is taking care of children and working at the same time, just as an example. But there's no doubt that this is a very challenging situation and a very challenging environment for almost everybody. So given that it is challenging, what can you do to step up, right? Essentially, think about how you can translate sort of the current environment into more opportunities for you. So always be on the constant lookout for opportunities to add value to your teams. This is not the time just to sit back and assume that because it's a virtual environment, schools will understand and it's okay to be a little bit more passive. You have to be constantly looking out for those opportunities. So what are some things that you can do? How can you step up? So here are just a couple of ideas. For instance, can you perhaps streamline a process? Can you maybe lend a hand on a project where a colleague may be struggling? And ultimately, why is this so important, right? Yes, of course, for business school applications, you want to be doing as much as you can, but ultimately, this will really provide you with that additional material and additional positive stories to convey in your applications. So always keep in mind that the application, if you kind of look at it holistically, is an opportunity to provide data points to the admissions committee about things that you have done. And it's mainly, it's even as you think about what you have done, it's not just the what, it's the why, right? So always keep the why in the back of your mind. These additional data points can be extremely, extremely helpful throughout the application process because you're being compared against someone else and other people. If you have more data points demonstrating what business schools like to see and the impact that you've had, you will be putting yourself in a better position. So these data points can start to come through as you look at the things you do in the workplace. They can start to come through in your resume. They can start to come through, of course, in your essays, because you'll just have much more material that you can draw from. Your recommenders can also add in more of those data points in their letters. And in the interview process, they can also start to come through as just additional things that you have done. And so not only will you stand out, but if schools are sort of weighing you with another candidate and you have more data points that they can point to, they will be much, much more confident with respect to giving you that spot because you have demonstrated all of these things that you've done. So now a corollary to that is to continue to focus on your extracurricular involvement. So always keep in mind that business schools assess how involved you will be on campus and in the broader community through the impact that you have already had on your communities thus far. So that includes what you did in college, and it includes what you have done post-college, right? So you don't want to let that lapse. Now, with shelter, there were a lot of lockdown mandates, et cetera, taking place. Things are slowly starting to open up. But that being said, you still cannot interact, very closely with people, et cetera, through these extracurriculars. So what can you do to continue to get involved, right? First off, don't sit back and wait for the world to return to normal. Take action now. This is a very similar sort of sentiment to the prior slide, which is, being proactive in the workplace, being proactive in the community. So don't sit back. Really think about how you can take action now. Think about ways that you can contribute virtually. And this could be ways you can contribute virtually through activities you are already involved in, and that's usually the easiest place to start. I mean, if you're already involved with an organization, you can reach out to people there and ask how you can give back in a more virtual way. Or if there are new opportunities, there are plenty of companies or organizations out there who probably can benefit from your expertise. So really think about what are some things that you can do from your home to contribute to your communities. And so here are just some ideas. You can organize fundraisers. Maybe you can mentor a student or tutor others virtually. Perhaps you can offer up your skill set and expertise to assist other organizations through the crisis. So for instance, are you a marketer? Maybe you can help an organization improve its digital footprint. Or are you in finance? Perhaps you can help a nonprofit to model, future financial scenarios. And so the sky is really the limit. Don't be afraid to think outside of the box here. So this, I am very, I stress this very, very strongly, that this area in particular is where a lot of people are taking sort of a step back, and you can really shine in the current environment by taking a step forward and stepping up when it comes to giving back to your communities. So definitely take some time to think about what you're currently doing now and what you can perhaps do going forward to really amplify that effect or that impact. And just to even, provide you perspective, this, of course, is an extremely important topic, in terms of giving back to many schools. Morton's second essay question this year, for instance, addresses this exact idea of contributing. And so the question is, taking into consideration your background, personal, professional, and or academic, how do you plan to make specific, meaningful contributions to the community? And so being able to point to things that you have done consistently, in college and beyond is really critical for a question like that, and is, really important for the admissions committee as they evaluate candidates. Okay. So let's talk about another way in which you can really stand out in this environment. It's being very clear around what your post-MBA goals are. Now, interestingly, given the environment, given how there are certain requirements that are being scaled back, like GMAT and GRE scores at some schools, this is leading a lot of people, as I mentioned, to submit applications, but oftentimes people are quickly submitting applications and not really thinking through what exactly they want to do. So they're kind of throwing in an application and it's just not of the highest quality. So you can really, really stand out by thinking about your own post-MBA goals, your trajectory, and how really the MBA programs fit into all of that. And so almost, or not all of the top tier business schools will want you to state your post-MBA career goals. So both in the short term and the long term, as well as how their particular program will help you to attain them. And so, as I mentioned many times, and this is happening a lot more because people are quickly just making the decision to apply, candidates many times are not putting in enough thought into their post-MBA goals and how their prior experiences have prepared them to achieve those goals. And so this really results in post-MBA goals that are unclear, that are too broad, which can really hurt a candidate's chances of admission. So what really constitutes strong post-MBA career goals? So in short, as this little diagram shows, strong post-MBA goals are specific, they're credible, and they are achievable. So let's just go through each of these. Okay. So first, your goals should be specific. Now, candidates are often hesitant to be specific in their post-MBA goals because they're unsure of what they really want to do after business school. And so they're concerned about being locked into what they write about. Now, be rest assured that once you are in business school, you can change your goals. No one is going to hold you to them. But for business school application purposes, it is extremely important to be able to state post-MBA goals that you plan to follow at really that point in time and that you are excited about pursuing. Because these goals will actually lay the foundation for your entire application. So specific post-MBA goals will stand out a lot more than those that are too broad. So as an example, instead of saying that you are interested in pursuing a career in healthcare, which is very broad, it's better to say that you want to lead strategy at a medical device company, which is easier to visualize and is much, much more tangible, right? So hopefully you can start to see the difference between a goal that is just very broad and a goal that is just, that is actually the opposite and much more specific and easier to get your hands around. So really take some time to think about your own specific goals. Now, second, your goals should be credible. Now, what does it mean for a goal to be credible? So essentially, credible goals should build upon what you have done in the past. So a pretty major career switch can often come across as unattainable, mainly because you don't have the prior experience in order to achieve it. So business schools always look at the past with respect to, seeing your ability to succeed in the future. And part of that is, how do you sort of connect the dots in your story? So as an example, if you're working in investment banking with a focus on consumer and retail companies, and you want to switch to the field of healthcare after graduating from business school, that's going to be a really tough sell to admissions committees because your expertise so far has been in the retail and consumer space. But if you want to work in corporate development within a consumer or retail company, that will be much, much more believable given your prior finance experience working with those exact same companies as an investment banker. So it's really important to be able to be very credible when it comes to your goals. Otherwise, essentially what you're going to demonstrate to the admissions committee is that you actually have not done a lot of deep thinking with respect to how everything in your story comes together. So it's really important, again, to just think about what is it about your goals that makes it very credible, and why, why do you sort of have what it takes to achieve those goals, and how will the MBA fit into that as you get to that point. And finally, your goals should be achievable. So essentially, admissions committees want to see that you have what it takes to accomplish your goals. And a lot of this really boils down to the qualities that you currently possess. And this goes back to you being very authentic, and, really demonstrating those qualities in the past, and, again, in order to succeed, in the future. And so admissions committees do assess your past achievements, both professional and extracurricular, as indicators of your success in the future, as they evaluate your post-MBA career goals. So it's really important to demonstrate your qualities and to show why you can achieve the goals that you set out for yourself throughout your application. So your resume, your essays, your recommendation letters, your data forms, etc. So as you think about crafting your post-MBA goals that are specific, that are credible, that are achievable, also think about what is motivating you to pursue them. And a lot of this will go back again, and so as you're seeing, a lot of this is all intertwined. This is going back again to your, kind of your unique attributes, your authentic story, etc. So really, what is motivating you to pursue what you'd like to pursue? Because that, again, is your very unique story. Essentially, and just to, kind of clarify this, if there are two people who are interested in leading strategy at a medical device company, the reasons for doing that will likely be very different for the two people. And it's drawing upon your story that will help to show why this goal means so much to you. So this is extremely important to do in today's environment, given that there are going to be many people who are just going to be submitting applications quickly, just to sort of see what happens, without really taking the time to think through things. And if you can think it through, the admissions committee will see that. And so that will also help you to stand out. And so finally, the other way in which you can really stand out in the current environment is through showing an ability to adapt and handle change. So there's no doubt about it. COVID-19 has resulted in many disruptions and many challenges. So how do you adapt to the change? How have you done this in the past? As schools look at developing leaders who give back in the future, they want leaders who are flexible, who can adapt, who can course correct if things suddenly come up that may not be, sort of what they expected. And so this question, interestingly, but not surprisingly, is becoming more important in this year's applications. And just to provide you with some perspective, here are just a couple of questions that have arisen along these lines. So Kellogg has a required video essay that says 2020 has been a year of seismic disruption, fighting the global COVID-19 pandemic, tragic deaths that have brought systemic racism and social justice issues to the forefront of long overdue conversations, and economic and political divides that are growing deeper and deeper. How has this unprecedented year challenged you, and how have you faced that challenge? UCLA, Anderson has an essay question. How have events of the past year influenced the impact you would like to make in your community, career, or both? We welcome reflection on any events that influenced you in your personal or professional lives, or in society in general, and look forward to learning about specific ways you want to leave your mark. Now, interestingly, if you look at both of these questions, and you start to kind of survey the other questions that are out there, schools want to understand specifically how you have faced these challenges, right? So Kellogg is asking, how have you faced that challenge? UCLA, saying we welcome reflection on any events that have influenced you in your personal or professional life. So they're not looking for anything broad. They want to see how you have handled that change and how you have handled the disruption in order to have impact, or maybe perhaps to just broaden your own worldview as you look at developing and becoming a stronger leader in the future. So this is definitely becoming a very, very important consideration in this year's applications. Okay. So with that, I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about why you should partner with Ivy Groupe. So we are a boutique MBA admissions consulting company. As I mentioned earlier, I am the primary consultant and I work directly with my clients. And this really differs from other MBA admissions consulting firms that pair or match you with a consultant who they think will be the best fit. These consultants are primarily working part-time or maybe less experienced. And I want to stress that this is my full-time role. And so we do offer very personalized services, and this has sort of translated in me being recognized for that as the #1 ranked consultant on Poets and Quants for really that client satisfaction. We also have a very dedicated advisory board comprised of professionals who have attended the top business schools and have a very deep understanding of the MBA admissions process. And so collectively, my advisory board and I were accepted and received invitations to interview from many of the top schools, as you can see here. And I've also successfully helped clients get admitted to a range of MBA programs, both within the US and abroad, such as Europe. And I've, of course, helped clients apply to part-time MBA and executive MBA programs as well. So you will know, that you will be in very experienced hands. We also use a very highly customized approach when working with you. Our process is very collaborative, and it's important to, for me to engage in an interactive dialogue with you to help you accomplish your goals. So you can feel free to view testimonials on our website at www.ivygroupe.com, and there is an E at the end of group. GMAT Club also has a ton of testimonials as well. And we also offer a range of services. So we offer comprehensive packages, which is end-to-end help, hourly services, and a pre-MBA package, which is really meant to strengthen your profile. And we also have an HBS interview prep package as well. And so feel free to email info@ivygroupe.com for more information, or go to the website and feel free to email that email address as well if you're interested in exploring further. And finally, I also just want to leave you with some additional resources. So feel free to sign up for emails at www.ivygroupe.com for tips and updates to stay ahead of the competition and to receive our free guide on the top 6 mistakes to avoid when applying to business school. And also, you can visit our website to watch more free videos about different topics related to the MBA application process. We also have a products page, and you can follow us on Twitter at Ivy Groupe, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And so with that, I would love to open it up to any questions. Okay. Here's the first question. Is there any flexibility with respect to the TOEFL? That's a great question, and I think you will just have to look at the specific requirements for each school to see if the specific schools you are applying to are offering that flexibility. So that's just going to have to be done on a case-by-case basis. So how much time do you need to consider after the GMAT exam for the application? So putting together strong applications can take, easily 3 to 4 months. I've done it in a much faster time frame. I would not recommend it. So I do think, for sure, spending at least a couple of months. Preparing your applications is always a good idea because it is a very, very iterative process. And so the more time that you have on your side, the more sort of, opportunity you'll have to iterate and to continue to just strengthen your applications. Now, what some people will do is, for instance, if you're targeting round 2 and you still need to take the GMAT or GRE or retake it, many people do that in parallel, where they will really allocate some time for both of those work streams, essentially, as they work towards those goals. So you just sort of have to manage and understand your own schedule, etc. But definitely give yourself at least a few months for the application process. So with the MBA programs waiving GMAT and GRE tests, and I want to say so far MIT is the only one who's really done that. Darden, I think, is accepting the SAT and ACT scores. But so what would be the expectations from the academics and overall profile? What would be the evaluation process? So in terms of the evaluation process, it won't be any different. But yes, they will be looking to your undergraduate GPA. There will probably be more emphasis on that to make sure you can handle the rigor of the curriculum. They'll be looking towards your recommendation letters to see, kind of what recommenders may be saying about your analytical skill sets, things like that. So they're going to be looking to other parts of your application, undergraduate record. They might dig in a little bit more, not only into the GPA, but into the classes that you have taken to see what your grades may have been in some of those more quantitative subjects. So there'll be more emphasis on sort of what you've done on the undergraduate side and what you may be doing professionally, just to demonstrate that you can handle the curriculum at business school. Okay. Great. So it looks like there may not be any more questions, but I'll just maybe give it another minute or so to see if anyone has any other questions. Then we can take it from there. Okay. All right, so here's a question about the Master's in Finance in Canada. Is it possible to get admitted without work experience if you score 650 plus yet to give the GMAT? You can get admitted, I believe, without work experience, but what you'll want to do is demonstrate what you've done in your internships in college, for instance, and to show, with any master's in finance program, schools will still want to see a couple of things. One is just how you've demonstrated an interest in that space in the past. So how have you shown your interest in the master's in finance? And also, data points like your GMAT, GRE, et cetera, to, again, those are very and I would say even more quantitatively heavy than the MBA program. So how are you able to handle those concepts so that you can succeed in their program? So here's another question. I can't submit an LOR for my current employer as I am worried about job security. If both the LORs that I submit are for my previous employers, would that negatively affect my application? No, it will not negatively affect your application. This is actually happening a lot. And of course, given COVID, it's a very valid concern to be concerned about job security if schools, or if not schools, but if your employer knows that you're applying to business school and may be leaving to attend an MBA program. In this case, just note down in your application in the additional info section that you are sort of asking two prior employers to write recs because of this reason. So just be transparent about it. Write a couple of lines in the additional info section just to let the schools know why that is the case. And that's really all you need to do. So if the GMAT is being waived, is it recommended to submit it? Great question. Yeah, I mean, if you've taken it, I would say, and whether or not to submit it will be done on a case-by-case basis, but overall, I would say, it's another data point again. So if you can provide, the schools with that additional data point, and in fact, some schools have said that even if it's an expired score, things like that, just submit it. It you're providing another data point for them to, for the admissions committee to understand as they continue to evaluate you versus other candidates. So do I provide support for MBA and European schools? Yes, I do. So I've worked with candidates across the spectrum of European schools. I would say mostly it's been weighted towards LBS, INSEAD, Oxford, and Cambridge, but can definitely provide support for pretty much any European MBA program. So what are your thoughts on the part-time programs? Do you think the number of applicants are going to go up? So, yeah, I do. I think for similar reasons, they will go up. And if you even think about the part-time program, it's a less of an opportunity cost, right? So if we're in this environment and a candidate is able to work while still getting that MBA degree, and to further enhance his or her skill set to become more marketable once we sort of get through all of this, I do think the number of applications will go up. And in general, I would say there has been definitely a pretty kind of across the board in terms of interest in MBA programs, I would say for full-time, part-time, and EMBA programs as well. So many people are looking to hone their own skill set during this very, kind of uncertain period. So how far off from the competitive or average GMAT score for a school should you be to feel comfortable in using the score? You want to be as close to it as you can be, but remember it's the application process is an art, not a science. And so the score is important, but there are other factors of the program, other factors about you that play into the process, right? Your story, your essays, your recommendation letters. So, again, this needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, but always sort of look holistically when it comes to that application. So it's hard to actually put a number in terms of how far off you should be. I've worked with candidates who have been, much lower than the average and have been accepted, and that's because there were other parts of the application that helped to balance that out. So it's important just to look at your whole application holistically, understand what your unique attributes are. If, is there a certain area that you perhaps shine in that can overcome, a GMAT score that may not be above the average, etc. So I wish I could answer this question, but it's really something that I think needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. Two general things that are different in an application for schools in the UK compared to schools in the US. I would say one of the biggest differences, one is, so for instance, INSEAD only accepts the GMAT score, I believe. I don't think they accept the GRE. So some of those schools may just be accepting the GMAT, while US schools are very open when it comes to both. The other big thing is that, for the European schools, there's a very, very heavy emphasis on your global perspective. It's true for the US schools as well, but probably more of an emphasis for the UK schools. Okay, all right. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap up here, but I hope you have found this to be helpful. And, as you progress in your journey, again, just, start to think about what makes you unique. And, good luck in your application journey going forward.